Well, I'm in a cab in New York heading to the airport. I've read a lot about the Lost Boys. In fact, read that they don't even like being called the Lost Boys, but don't really have a sense of quite what life is like for them. So heading out to Utah to meet some of them and find out. When I first came here, I was expecting that sexy, sensational story of boys who have left this closed-off community and are trying to deal with the world, and it's so much more than that. It's so much more nuanced. It's so much more interesting and so much more human. It's a story of being torn in different directions. I just got to meet some of the boys for the first time, went to the house here in Utah, and it's interesting. You read about these guys, you imagine what their lives are like in these closed-off compounds, and then you meet them and they seem like totally normal teenage boys. Of course, they're dealing with a lot of extra issues that you or I can't possibly imagine dealing with. One of the boys, we were chatting over breakfast this morning, and one of the guys, Brucey, told me, your parents collected all of the photos of you, put them in a box, and said, get them if you want them?
My mom wasn't near as bad like that. I mean, she gave them to me when I left.
Incredible to imagine being one of these kids and having to pick up the pieces at 15 years old and refigure a life without any real guidance, without parents to do that. We've got our first interview tonight with a guy named Caleb. I understand he's kind of reluctant to speak with us. So I'm going to read up on him for a bit here and get ready for tonight's interview. When Warren Jeffs came, things started to change?
Yeah.
How so?
Like he said, no vacations, no television. Like you can only listen to his music, his wives made or else he made. He just started like taking all the families away.
It's interesting to think of what these guys have going on in the back of their minds. They've gone through so much, processed so much. Caleb says his mother passed away and he couldn't even go to the funeral because he was not allowed back in. Was there a funeral for your mom?
Yeah, there was.
Did you go?
No, they wouldn't actually let us go out there to it.
You couldn't go to your own mom's funeral?
Yeah, we'd have had to bring the police and everything to go do it. So we just decided not to.
Just so many things that these boys are thinking about, and to sit down with me and lights and a synthetic setting of 2 cameras, and to have to process that for a stranger must be even more difficult. We're heading up to Escalante to meet Michelle. That's where she lives, with a couple of the guys that are living with her as well. Driving along this highway here. It's awfully pretty here in southern Utah. Driving with Kevin, one of my producers, and HYRUM here, one of the guys that we'll be talking with. This is your neighborhood. This is where you spent a lot of time growing up.
Since I was about 6.5, 7 years old, yeah.
Your mom was reassigned and you were moved into this house here?
Yes.
How was that?
It was awkward for the first while. You get used to it. And then after, you just kind of stick with the people you know, and have fun with them, and try to just work other people into your life slowly.
When you're younger, you don't really go outside the town very much. And so anytime new people come into town, it's something they've never seen before.
So some of these kids are probably pretty young.
Yeah.
How old were you guys when you first ventured outside of this community?
Oh, probably 14. I mean, I've been outside of it with like my dad, but before I actually been out on my own and gone and done things with me and my friends, you know, it was like 14, 15.
14, 15 years of your life you lived in this little town and never really saw much more than that.
Yeah.
This is our interview setting. We're about to meet Frankie here in the town of Escalante, Utah. He is going to join us. We'll sit down and chat about his life. Do you still love your parents?
Yeah. I love my parents to death. I don't care what they've done. I don't even care if I never see them again. All I want to know is that they're okay. All I want to know is that all those beautiful people that I was raised with, grew up with, are okay. And that all is well with them. I really don't care whether or not I ever see them again.
Really?
I wish it'd be different, but really.
There's a reluctance. There's clearly a desire to talk with us, but also a reluctance too. So each interview is more challenging than most, but good to meet him. We just interviewed Michelle. She is doing so much with so little and is incredibly protective of these boys. Some of these stories are pretty sad.
They are.
Are there points that you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly help?
I'm not sure if I say I can't possibly help, because I kind of think, I think that, you know, with the right people, that you can move people in a good direction. But what I feel is a strong sense of sadness. And there are times I just have to sit down and talk to God for a while, because it's more than people should have to bear.
It's a story of being torn in different directions, of leaving your family, of loving your childhood, of not knowing where to turn, and that's where Michelle comes in. She's trying to, I think she called it a landing pad, be a place for these kids to turn.
And they're still kids. They're still trying to figure it out. And if they don't have people there to help them figure it out, then what? Then we end up with adults who are even in worse shape than they were when they left their homes. So, yeah, there are some sad stories.
Our challenge, my challenge will be to try and get across some of the nuance, some of what I've gotten to glimpse over the course of a couple of days and many hours, and try and condense that. But there is this tug of war here, this very profound, deep, emotional tug of war of kids who've left everything and are trying to find themselves.